This is Jill from Fabric Garden, and today I am going to go over month 2 of our Radiance block of the month. So this month we've got a much more complicated block to make. So I'm going to show you the block, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about why it's a little more difficult, and then we will go over some tips and tricks on making it. So you are going to make 4 of these blocks. So this is our block, and we're making 4 of these. Now, what makes this block more difficult is we have these units that we need to make. And these units are made from squares and from quarter square triangles. So first off, I'm going to clarify quarter square triangle. So when you look at a triangle that has been cut in half versus a triangle that has been cut twice in half, it all has to do with the direction of the fabric. So when you have a square and you cut it once on the diagonal, that long side of the triangle is all bias. And so when we're making blocks like this, we do not want bias on the outside edge. So these squares get cut and then they get cross-cut twice. So that means the long edge will be width of grain or length of grain, so you won't have stretchiness to deal with out there, and your unit will lay flatter in your block, and it will be easier to work with it because it won't have stretchiness on the outside edge. So because we're having a lot of these quarter square triangles that we're working with, your cutting precision becomes very important. So when you're cross-cutting the squares, you really want to take the time to line that ruler up such that when you cut it, it really is a point. Because sometimes if you're in a hurry and you cut, sometimes one side looks like a point and the other side has a nub on the end. And that's because you didn't actually cut exactly from corner to corner. You were off a little bit one way or the other with a ruler. So I like to think of it that when I lay my ruler down, I can still kind of see that point of the square. So when I cut it, I'm cutting right through that point. And so making sure of that on all 4 corners as I cross-cut these twice. So accurate cutting of the square, careful cutting when you cross-cut so that all 4 pieces are the same size. So that is the cutting precision. Next, I'm going to talk about piecing these. So let me take a moment, get my camera readjusted down to the table so we can take a closer look at these pieces and how they go together. Okay, so first we need to make 2 units that are made, and these units need to be mirror images of each other. And my recommendation is your pattern has pictures. I literally laid my blocks on top of the pattern and made sure I was really lined up correctly. So you start out by sewing a quarter square triangle to either side of a square, and you really need to look at your pattern to make sure that you have the angle going the right direction. Because in one set, we're making 2 mirror images. In one set, the angle is going one direction. In the second set, it is going the other direction. So you sew these, press towards your squares on all of these, So you sew 2 of these, and then you sew 2 together, and they are going to be offset. So these seams will nest, and you will just sew this like it's 3 rows. Row 1 to row 2, and then that unit to row 3, and you will have the mirror image of this unit. Now you will see that I've got dog ears here, and it's very tempting to cut these off, but sometimes the dog ears can help you when you sew your pieces together. So I usually leave them until it is time. I've sewed it together, and then if I've got a dog ear back in my seam allowance, I cut it off. So once I sewed my rows together, so on these pieces I pressed towards my dark, and then on these, and this is optional, but I did spin my seams to make a much flatter feel here at these points. So you're making 2 of these for each block of mirror images. And then you have another set of mirror images. These here, you can see they are mirrored. And these, again, I literally laid them on top of my pattern to check that I had fabric placement. And I laid it out, and then the way this laid out was a triangle, triangle, square, triangle. So again, I did rows. I sewed the 2 triangles, triangle, square, triangle together, and then I sewed the 2 rows together. I pressed toward the solid blue, and I did spin my seam in the middle. So for each block, you will have a mirror image pair of these. So you can see, because we have no way to trim these to perfection because of the type of block they are, the accuracy not only of your cutting, but the accuracy of your 1/4 inch seam is important. If you are not certain about how to check the accuracy of your 1/4 inch seam, you can either call me or you can send me an email, and I can send you off some information on that. So you have some other pieces here. I'm going to show you how this lays out. So I've got another triangle, and then I haven't sewn this piece together, so I'm going to put that there. So I'll talk about sewing these together when I put the mirror image, since this one is not together. And then the large triangle goes at the top. So this is actually like this. Okay. Then got this other piece here, and the points of these 2 are going to match, and you can cut this off because the flat edge is going to match, and of course these ones, we know dog ears can come off. Got a square in the center, and then at the other end, had to pick out which one was the right one. Bend this down, this one here. So, and again, the points here are matching. So we've got a little triangle that goes down here, and this is where one of the instances that I'm talking about where it helps that I did not cut this dog ear off, because now this triangle, I don't need this dog ear, but you can see the point on my triangle now matches up with that dog ear. So they both just match right together when I sew it together. So I don't have this this one hanging out into nowhere, it's matching up to this dog ear. And the same thing will happen on this other side. And then this last piece comes on, and let me adjust here, get it in frame. And this is another instance where you can see flat to flat, but when I fold these over right sides together, this dog ear out here will match up with the point on this triangle. So these just go together in rows. You can see this in your pattern. You get all your pieces laid out and you sew in 3 rows, kind of diagonal across the box. 3 pieces, 3 pieces, 3 pieces, and once you have your 3 rows sewn, then you sew the rows together into the block. So the construction is not overly difficult, but the importance of accuracy and cutting and your 1/4 inch seam is big. And when I sewed my 3 rows together, I did press towards the outer corners because I had all these points here that if I would have pressed towards those points, it would have been very lumpy. But by pressing away, it's pretty flat. It's, you know, still a little bit, but not bad. So it went together very nicely. So as always, if you end up with any questions about your cutting or your piecing, you can always give us a call. I can answer questions over the phone. We can always do some sort of Zoom or FaceTime, you know, or if you come in, I can give you some pointers in the shop. So just make sure if you're feeling stuck on any of this, don't just set it aside, give us a call and we'll help you get going again. So thanks so much for joining us in making this beautiful quilt.